order. As we resume the application for Vale Soccer property at Long Hill Road, Riverside Drive, the applicant seeking special permit for lighting at the soccer fields. Now, I see there's one person listed in the virtual audience that I don't know, labeled Beta.
Beata.
Yeah. Okay.
She's not.
Hi,
Are
Jen.
you?
I'm just here to observe. Thanks for having
Okay.
me.
Okay, very good, thank you. So is there anybody here from Vale Soccer Club to discuss the application? Yes, sir.
So I can speak to that. Vale Soccer Club has made a decision that they will no longer use Andover Fields. So they have packed up and moved to Coventry. So this application, from my perspective, they have no intention of submitting a completed application. So I would guess you could close the public hearing and deny the application and move on.
Okay. Thank you, Eric. Jim, do you have any, I'm not thinking there's gonna be a lot of discussion here, but I'll give the commission members the opportunity to provide comment, if they want.
I have had no communication from
Okay.
them or any inquiries from the public.
Very good. Hearing no comments or questions or any discussion on the application other than what Eric just provided, I will close the public hearing. And it's at time 7:02. And I will call the regular planning and zoning meeting to order at time 7:02. Roll call and seating of alternates. I see we've got Ann Cremay, Scott, Patrick. I see Leanne, you're here with us? I don't show you as muted, Leanne.
What?
Oh, just making sure you're electronically connected to us. And you're
Yeah,
here.
thank
for
you.
roll call. Okay. And myself, so all 5 regular members are here. I see Susan England and Anne Marie Daigle. I do not see Kevin with us tonight, so Kevin's absence, Susan and Anne Marie are present as alternates. And no alternates will be seated. Item 3 is additions or changes to the agenda. And I've got one addition. I was just going to include it under discussion, but we've got a couple of other things labeled there, so I would like to add item 10C under discussion is a discussion on signs. Any other additions to the agenda?
If I might, Mr. Chair,
Yes,
can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay,
Hear you
so,
well.
my understanding is that the town is bringing on a new zoning enforcement officer. If he is going to start before the next planning and zoning meeting, it might be appropriate to go ahead and formally appoint him as a zoning enforcement officer so he can hit the ground running.
But good point, John, and what I meant to do, of course, I didn't write it down in my notes, so I don't have it here, is to introduce the new zoning enforcement officer to me. And that's Wayne Kasich.
Our side of family pronounces it Kasachik.
Kasachik, okay? And he is here tonight. Now, so he will be taking over for Jim at some point in the future. That will not be between now and the next planning and zoning meeting. You know, I will give Wayne the floor in just a minute to sort of introduce himself to everybody, but he does not have a lot of zoning planning and zoning experience at this point, and so we're gonna have a little bit longer turnover than we might normally have. So I'm aware of the fact that we have to appoint him at some point, but that won't be tonight, and I do expect somewhat on the order of if Wayne had his way and I had my way, it would be like 4 months before he takes the reins. He's got a little bit to learn, so with that, Wayne, you want to say anything to
Can they all see and hear me from here, or should I move, or?
It's easier if you're sitting at the table, but
Yep,
you should be visible in the
If-
audience.
Yeah, once he starts talking, the camera should find him.
Okay. Well, hi, my name's Wayne Kosachik. I've been living here in Andover for about 12 years now. Prior to that, I used to work on one of the dairy farms here in town on Cone Road. I'm just happy to have gotten this job. I haven't been appointed yet, but I fully expect to be able to meet the expectations of the board and the town administrator. Has been said, I don't have any specific experience in zoning. My background is with the Connecticut Department of Agriculture as a regulator. So I'm hoping that experience and training bodes well for this position.
okay, thank you, Wayne, yep. Back to item 3, additions or changes to the agenda. I'll make a motion to add item 10, Charlie, signs under discussion. And that would be the only change for tonight. Looking for a second to the motion.
One second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Ann?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Leanne?
Oh, yes, I'm here. Aye.
Thank you, and I vote aye as well. The motion passes 5-0-0. Next item up is public comment on any items other than the agenda. Anybody from the public want to speak at this time? And I see Joanne Herbst here. Do you have any comments for us, Joanne?
No, I'm all set. I just want to listen to the meeting. Thank you so much.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
Beata, Ms. Beata, I don't have your first name here, but
That's your first name.
oh, that is your first name. Okay, very good. Beata, do you have any comments for us tonight?
No, thank you, Jed.
Okay. Then we'll move on to old business. First up is action on the application of Vail Soccer. And again, I think I will make this a part of the standard routine, just so I can't be accused of influencing the vote in a negative direction, but we always vote our votes for the positive. So if you're not going to vote in favor of the motion, then don't vote in favor of the motion. I'll make a motion to approve the application of Vail Soccer for the lighting at the soccer fields.
I'll second it.
Scott, seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call
Jed,
for.
hi,
a
it's
vote.
Leanne.
Yeah, go ahead, Leanne.
Yeah, I must have been signing in right at 7 o'clock. I missed you must have immediately convened the public hearing, and then I was on the call when you closed it. But what was the reason for the basically no discussion then?
The reason for the no discussion was the Vail Soccer Club is chosen to move over to Vernon, where I guess they have lights. Coventry. And so there's nobody here to discuss the motion. No further action was taken since the last meeting.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll call for a vote to approve the application for the lights at the soccer field. Dan?
No.
Scott?
No.
Patrick?
No.
Leanne?
No.
And I vote no as well. Motion fails 0-5-0. Next item up is yours, John, the plan of conservation and development.
Okay, thank you, Jed. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Gonna do a short, hopefully relatively short presentation. Let's see. Let me move this over so I can see it. All right. Does this look more or less like a PowerPoint presentation on the screen?
Yeah,
Okay, here, I'm gonna start it.
now if you go to full screen, it might be bigger, so we can read it a little better.
Yeah, let's see, swap. All right, how about this?
That's better.
It's better.
Okay, so what we're talking about today is the first of the 6 substantive chapters or substantive sections from the Plan of Conservation and Development as we have outlined it. You'll recall that in our vision statement, we had 6 we envision statements that covered a variety of topics, including housing and community resources and natural environment, conservation. And this one included this town's road network. And it included the statement, "We envision a safe and vibrant Andover that connects the community through a network of complete streets and enhances the town's civic campus on both sides of Route 6 at its heart." So this is sort of, again, one of our, the topic sentence essentially of one of our 6 topics for discussion. I'm going to go through a little bit discussion about what complete streets is and why we're kind of using this as the framing device of the topic, and then we'll have a little bit of discussion on sort of key areas of focus. So first, what are complete streets? And I'll not read the whole thing, but again, as it sounds, it's complete. It's meant for all users of streets in a safe way, all ages and abilities, drivers, pedestrians, bicyclists, or public transportation riders. And the idea is from the beginning, from the conception and planning of streets to the actual construction and operation of roadways, make sure that all users are considered and their safety and efficiency is at its heart. So it's an approach to planning, constructing, and operating transportation networks. Why are we doing this? And I will pause quickly by way of thanking Eric Anderson for all of his work and advocacy on complete streets, not only in Andover over the last many years, but also regionally. And a lot of this information comes from various presentations that Eric has assembled over the last couple of years. So why focusing on complete streets is because our streets are not fantastically safe, not only in Andover, but statewide, network wide. The top graph is fatalities over the last 10 years, and this I believe is nationwide. And so you see after COVID in 2020, traffic fatalities have dramatically increased. And the bottom chart shows you again the jump in pedestrian accidents, fatalities, bicycle fatalities, and cars. And you can see the purple and the green. Your less traditional users of our street networks, pedestrians and bicycles, are tremendously more at risk than vehicles, and have had huge increases again since 2020 or so. It's never been great, but since 2020, those numbers have jumped significantly. In particular, in Andover, we have been focusing on complete streets since the 1978 Plan of Conservation and Development, and that established a clear goal of making Andover more walkable and bike friendly. But not a lot of progress has been made over the last 45 years or so. The Planning Commission recognized about 10 years ago that the POCD did not properly address complete streets. And so in 2016, the first Andover Complete Streets program was adopted with the goal being safe streets are complete streets and making the road network work for everyone. And so again, the complete streets is the concept. The approach is the safe streets system or safe systems approach. And you can see the graph there that, death and serious injuries are unacceptable. Humans do make mistakes. Humans are vulnerable. Responsibility is shared. Safety is proactive and redundancy is crucial. And so it's kind of a holistic approach to looking at our transportation networks and how can we do this in a way that makes everyone safer without sacrificing efficiency. The traditional approach is to a certain extent kind of a shrug or looking at kind of best case. Well, people just need to do the right thing in all circumstances. People, need to perfect their behavior. Looking at preventing collisions and focusing on individual, the driver or the operator responsibility, and basically saying, well, stuff's going to happen. Traffic deaths are inevitable. However, a Vision Zero through a safe systems approach, it recognizes that people will make mistakes, that drivers are going to make errors. And so the idea is to anticipate these mistakes by designing better systems, better road infrastructure, vehicles to make those mistakes, the risks and the implications less severe, so that when a mistake does happen, a crash does happen, the safe system that we put in place reduces the impact. So it's slower speeds, it's different approaches on collisions or intersections. And this is something that, again, if you bake this into the whole system, it doesn't necessarily have to be expensive because you're planning this from the beginning. So it's a different way of approaching the street network. So our complete streets goal, again, starting with the overall goal of a safe systems approach, is we need to change the municipal policies that in a way that includes the needs, not just people in vehicles, but also, I should say, motor vehicles, people on foot, people on bicycle, people in buses or other forms of transit, making sure that this works for people of all ages and abilities so that there are more options than just getting into a car, that you can get to school, to work, to shop, to recreate, in multiple modes in a way that is safe, and to then use this complete streets approach to increase the quality of life for Andover residents, so people don't feel stuck, particularly if they don't have ready access to a personal vehicle, so that they can feel like they can walk safely, they can ride a bicycle safely. There are transit options. And then to make sure that the Public Works Department, as they are the ones that are going to be primarily responsible for enacting this stuff, make sure that the Public Works Department has the appropriate guidance, that they can make the improvements in the way that will improve the system. So again, with thanks to Eric, basically since the 2016 first Complete Streets plan, there have been a number of success stories, completed projects, including, and again, I'm not going to read all of these, several bicycle and pedestrian crossings, across Route 6, particularly, to get from the north side to the south side at Long Hill, or vice versa, the north side at Long Hill. Accessibility improvements at the library, access to the rail trail, the Hop River, a variety of pedestrian and bike safety signs and road treatments around the lake. Working on connecting town assets, again, the recreational fields, the library, churches, town hall, the schools, bike racks at public locations, wayfinding signs, and then again more recently the e-bikes at the community center, which Jed and I were fortunate enough to take out a couple of weeks ago, and hopefully others have gotten a chance to try those. So those are all success stories. There are more. And a lot of this is in process. We have a nearly $300,000 connectivity grant, signalization upgrades, a study for the Route 316 connection, and that plan has basically been complete. The more recent grant following up that connectivity plan is a 3 million lot SIP grant to actually build out the multi-use pathway, and that should be happening over the next couple of years. A more recent grant from the DEP to design the improvements of the Percy Cook Trail, which is again another way to get from kind of the civic campus, town hall area out to the Hop River Trail. And then some of the policy changes incorporating safe, complete streets into the road network, design decisions, changing zoning regulations that includes bicycle parking and pedestrian access, rail trail crossing, as well as speed signs and other trail improvements. So a number of things have happened already. And so the town, I think, largely under Eric's leadership and direction, as well as Public Works and Planning and Zoning, has really moved forward on a lot of the complete streets goals and connectivity mission. But there's still a number of things that need to be addressed, and these are some of the things that ideally will be put into the Plan of Conservation and Development. I'm going to put this on the screen, and we're going to come back to it in a little bit. Again, that while the crossing around Long Hill has been added to Route 6, there are several other crossings of Route 6 that are going to be important in order to knit the town more closely together in the future. Again, the safe access, installing the safe access to town resources, particularly, again, the rec fields, town hall, the community center, schools, library, etc. Safe access from a number of places on the rail trail, both on the north and the south side of Route 6, as well as those smaller connections using the Hop River Trail to connect to town businesses. And we're looking at particularly places like the Shell Station and the Andover Plaza. Looking at other safety improvements in the Lake District, which is of course the most highly populated, highest density area, and the area with the largest population of current and potential pedestrians, as well as adding connections such as secure bike racks, public transportation, wayfinding, and then looking at addressing issues of speeding, running stop signs, and visibility issues. But this is sort of a short list, but it addresses some of the things that are kind of shortcomings in our complete streets system right now.
Let me interrupt you for just a minute, John.
Of course.
The previous slide had a picture of the state trooper down there somewhere, probably on Lake Road. And it was funny because a couple years back, when we started asking questions about what are the problems in the town, everybody was talking about speeding, especially around the lake. And then, so our state trooper goes out there and watches and gives out a couple of tickets, and everybody's in an uproar because you're not supposed to be arresting us, you're supposed to be arresting those other folks that are driving around the lake fast. Yeah, I thought that was kind of humorous. The other thing, well, two other points before we get too far. Connecticut has made the news recently with 2023 had a record number of traffic fatalities, and 2024 is on track to beat that. So that shows the importance of us approaching the vision zero that Eric had put in there. And then lastly, the last comment I want to make is as we go through the POCD, he's got a list of issues, you've got a list of issues to address here. And is that helpful when it comes time for us to make that 824 referral that our Plan of Conservation and Development supports something that we want to go off and do? If it's specifically listed, it's very easy. If it's not specifically listed or not in the POCD at all, it makes it tough to go out and fill those 824 referrals that we have to do when we're gonna, make substantial improvements in the town, spend town money, that sort of thing. So having had to go through and try to justify a couple of the things, I was not on as firm a ground as we might have been like Eric's got these issues spelled out. We need to make sure if something's important, it's in the plan of conservation development. So when we go off and do it, we can say that, yep, we looked at it, this is what we want to do, and that sort of thing. So enough of my interruption. Go ahead, John.
Okay, no, well, that actually cues us up nicely, Jed, to the next steps and actions, which again could take the form of essentially that list of recommendations, those list of improvements that could filter nicely into grant applications or 824 referrals if we're making improvements on municipal assets. So again, we put this in a couple of broad categories. Would be traffic calming and lower speed roads, because again, if you're taking a complete streets and a safe systems approach, part of the way to reduce fatalities, reduce severity of accidents and mistakes is again to reduce speeds. And so, you know, insofar as we don't control the speeds on Route 6 or on Route 316 or other town roads, or obviously work with the state on calming those speeds down, lowering speed limits, traffic calming, sometimes with physical changes to the road. And those things could include, I will say could include things like speed humps or speed tables, roundabouts, sharrows, which again are those markings on the streets where you see sort of arrow, like a double arrow, and then a bicycle icon that indicates that the road, the full width of the road, is meant to be shared between bicycles and motor vehicles, as well as road striping. And Eric had discussed with us a while ago, and I don't know if this was at a public meeting or a private meeting that we had, or a staff meeting, that very often center striping encourages higher speeds, because the path of the travel path is a little bit better delineated and people feel more comfortable to drive more quickly. But edge striping, which essentially you have no center stripe, but you just stripe the edges of the road, and so the center portion of the road is essentially a two-way shared. It not forces, but it encourages people to slow down, because there is no, you feel a little bit less certain which part of the road you're on, or that you're giving oncoming traffic enough berth. And it tends to reduce speeds. And so that could be a different approach in the way that the town delineates its roads. So again, these are potential next steps. A couple of other categories, again, multi-use path and trail connections, again, recognizing sort of over and over in a lot of our discussions that the Hop River Trail is a really critical spine, not only for transportation and recreation, but also in many ways economic development and sort of fostering the sense of place and community in Andover. And so looking at those connections, again, Route 316 between town campus and the Hop River Trail, that is in progress, but it's possible that we're going to need more support and more financing for that. Looking at connecting the Andover Plaza, which is one of the major potential commercial drivers in town, connecting that to the rail trail, going farther down, Route 6 from Hendy Road. Hendy Road is going to become important, particularly as the bridge on Long Hill is going to be under construction. Then getting from the gas and convenience stores, again, looking at some of the commercial connectivity, as well as the potential development at Route 87 and Lindholm Corner, and then looking at sidewalks, whether it's on Long Hill Road to the recreation complex, would connect the town campus, and then well out at Hendy Road as well. And then again, some of the physical improvements to town roads that we discussed on the previous slide, that would include traffic calming, such as edge line striping, share, but then also trailhead parking areas, so people can drive, leave their vehicles, get on bikes or start walking, more bike racks and senior transportation, as well as electric vehicle charging opportunities, particularly as we see more and more electric vehicle traffic on the Hop River Trail and in town in general. So there's a number of specific actions and specific locations we can focus on. So that's in broad strokes. That's the idea. Again, focusing on our transportation systems improvements and our connectivity in Andover as a holistic thing, taking a complete streets and street safety approach, or safe systems approach. And then, you know, filtering it down. What are the ways that we can improve our systems and our streets to make things more efficient and particularly safer for the community? So with that, I will stop with the presentation part and open it up. If people had thoughts about key areas or elements of our town, you know, from a transportation standpoint, that we should also be focusing on. And this again, you know, feel free to identify a stretch of road, an intersection, or a group or a circumstance that we want to make sure that people are that the plan picks up. So I'll shut up for a moment and just take notes if people have things to offer.
Eric, did you have anything you wanted to add at this point?
Oh, plenty, but you're the commission. I'm not the commission, so I think it's better to hear from all of you first.
Okay, any of the commission members have any comments on what John walked us through there?
I had a thought that doesn't really maybe go with plan conservation and development, but I thought how 100 years ago, the railroad was the lifeline for getting in and out of Andover, and now we're looking at the rail trail doing a lot of the same kind of thing, providing a way to get around town and a safer thing than being on the main roads for people on bicycles and walking. It's an interesting connection.
That's a good.
Yeah.
I like the thought.
I remember when I was a kid, my father telling me he would come in before his parents moved to Andover, and they would take the train in from Hartford, get off at Center Street, and walk up to my parents or my Uncle Eddie's farm, which was on Wheeling Road. You know, the problem with Route 6 is it really divided the town kind of into two equal, you know, and that's been the case almost since the day it was built. I mean, I know when I was a kid, when I started off, the only rule my father had bicycling was I could not ride across Route 6. So everything on the north half of town and much of Coventry was mine, but you know, I couldn't go to the school, you know, and I couldn't visit my friends that lived over on Shoddy Mill because I wasn't allowed to ride across the street.
There
So,
was no light back then. The lights rather new.
yeah. So, and kind of the other thing is I've been kind of looking at the big picture. And, you know, first of all, we talk about the safety issues in the town of Andover as a pedestrian and as a cyclist, and they are real. But I also don't want to overly sensitize people to this. Because of all the places I ride my bicycle, Andover is a genuinely safe place to ride overall. Are there problems? Sure. You know, there's no question that, you know, there are always some risks, but, you know, so we have a relatively safe, and most of our rural roads are fine for walking and cycling. You know, if you have a cul-de-sac, it doesn't really need anything, you know, in terms of complete streets. It's already basically a complete street. If you were gonna do anything, you could drop the speed limit a little bit, but that's basically all you have to do. There's nothing more. So what we're talking about is kind of the backbone roads, you know, the Shoddy Mills and the Long Hill roads, in the Hendies of the world, and saying, okay, what are the things we can do to those roads to make them work for a cyclist or a pedestrian or somebody on any kind of micro mobility device? You know, and then how do we change the focus, and how do we adapt to the fact that e-bikes, you know, are now a thing? And if you start looking in any cities, they're a significant component of the mobility, you know, in cities. And certainly if you look to Europe, a bicycle, you know, and a scooter or an e-bike, you know, become a significant fraction of the population, you know, traveling in that. And so what do you do as a municipality to kind of encourage that? Without, we're still gonna spend 96% of our transportation dollars on roads to make cars, to repair damage done by cars and make it work for cars. But we need to be spending a portion of it to work for everybody else. And that's really what Complete Streets is. If you've never heard of the term Vision Zero, that was something that that was a European concept, came out of Sweden initially. And it was a response to school moms that were complaining, actually not in Sweden, in Holland, I'm sorry, that were complaining that too many of their kids were getting killed, on Dutch streets. And so the Dutch government really took that to heart in the 1970s and said, okay, we're going to figure out how to make this actually work so everybody can ride their bikes and everybody can be safe. And if you go back to 1970 and compare Holland and the United States, there was very little difference. They were both predominantly car-based cultures, and they had similar pedestrian, cycling, and automobile fatality rates. And then you forecast to today, where they've spent the last 50 years working on that, and it's now 7 or 8 times safer to be a cyclist in Holland, and it's 10 or 12 times safer to be a pedestrian in Holland. So we have the potential, to save a lot of lives, and at the same time start reforming how we deal with automobiles on our roads. Because the reality is, the majority of people that are killed on roadways are still drivers of automobiles. And so what Vision Zero is the concept that basically people are going to do dumb things, whether they are texting or whether they are just tired or whether they are just daydreaming about the problems they had at work. I mean, I know a couple of weeks ago, I drove through a red light. I was completely zoned out, drove right through the intersection, realized the guy coming the other way put his brakes on, and I've been the other guy too. So we all make mistakes. The idea is to make the roads in the intersection such that if somebody makes a mistake, it's not going to kill anybody. And that's really kind of the goal, in a nutshell.
One of the things that I don't think has gotten any significant press, but is always a concern of mine, especially with the windy roads, is the number of landscape companies or tree companies that they park the big trailers right on a curve, and you have no visibility going around the curve, and you just kind of hold your breath and go out around the guy, hoping that there's nobody coming the other way. And frequently enough, the traffic's slow enough that there is nobody coming. But every time I go around one of those guys, it's on a curve, because they always park, where it's convenient for them, not for the traffic. It bothers me, and don't know what the solution is, but I do feel more at risk at that particular moment.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I wanted to go through the Complete Streets first because I knew Eric had a good product ready to go. And I knew how, we all know how passionate he is about this, and so I knew it would be a good product ready to go, and it is. And so
So, okay, a couple of things, if I might, Jed.
yep.
So first thing in the chat, I just note that Anne Marie had posted a sort of a question and comment saying, we talked about the state routes and she didn't think we could do anything about state roads. For example, Boston Hill is awful with people speeding. It's not safe at all to walk. And obviously we don't control those and we don't necessarily call the shots. However, a lot can happen on state roads if the municipality is a forceful actor. And I would point out, example number one right now is that the town got, $3 million from the state in order to make a state route safer at basically our initiative, but the state is very willing to see investment, although they don't necessarily make or prioritize the investment themselves. But if it's directed by the town, in this case a grant that we helped write, the improvements can be made to state routes, for safety, pedestrian friendliness, and that sort of thing. And I can note in many of the towns I work in, most of the sidewalks that we're getting funded and installing are on state roads. So a lot of that stuff can happen. Again, if it becomes a town priority, and a key way for it to become a town priority is, again, including it in the plan of conservation and development. So that's point number one. Point number two is, if there are other comments, I'm happy to add them. I don't want to cut things off, although Jed's the chairman around here. What I would note is I'm going to take these comments as well as sort of the outline that we created in this PowerPoint presentation and start roughing out an actual substantive text chapter of the plan of conservation and development for your review, ideally in advance of the next meeting. And at the next meeting, we will have a conversation about another one of the 6 vision statements. That's up to Jed. I believe that we're going to be inviting the Conservation Commission to an upcoming meeting, and they're going to talk about natural resource preservation and open space.
I sent out an email within the last couple of days to Mary Ann Guile, and haven't heard back from her yet, but offered her an opportunity to come talk to us as early as next meeting.
Okay, so then that would.
That I would point out for influencing, things on the state route is when we were putting in the Dollar General store, we had the 50-mile-an-hour speed limit, picking up right before you got to Dollar General and the Extra Mart across the street and all that. And the town sent something off. It was really from the comments of the people at the public hearing. Planning and zoning sent it to the Board of Selectmen. Board of Selectmen sent it to the DOT, and they lowered the speed limit a little bit. Not as much as I was hoping they would. We asked to go down to 40, but they lowered it to 45. So, that was a little bit of an area where we were able to put some safety-minded stuff in there.
Right. So the town does have some ability, even though we don't own the streets. But yeah, no, if the town is putting essentially its grant dollars and its local policies forward in a way that would sort of push the state to make some of their roads safer, that's something that we can definitely do. And my hope is, sort of with a semi-amateur eye on this, I do get the sense that the DOT has become at least a bit friendlier to some of these improvements. And Eric, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the commissioner, I think that the last couple of commissioners have been at least very friendly to the concept.
Yeah, they're under a lot of heat now because the traffic fatalities are so high.
Well, yeah, there are a couple of things. One, every time the state fails, every year the state has to propose to the federal government what its metrics are for safety on state roads. And they have to get buy-in from all the regional councils of government. So every year they put these things out, and they haven't met their goals in like a long time. And their goals are not aggressive. I mean, their goals are kind of pathetic, and the state is not meeting them. And every time that happens, the repercussion is the state funding from the federal transportation dollars. An increasing fraction of that has to go into safety countermeasures on state roads, because the state's not giving you money to build new stuff until you prove the stuff you have has been made safer. So there is more money in the pipeline. The other thing that's the commissioner, the DOT commissioner is named Gary Euclidito. He's been in for about a year and a half. He was hit by an automobile in Washington, DC, and hospitalized for a a considerable period of time. So he as an individual has internalized the ramifications of not having safe streets. And the directive right now at DOT is every time they have a construction project, they have to either meet the state's guidelines for complete streets and safe street systems, or the only two people in the DOT that can grant an exception are Commissioner Euclid himself or the chief engineer for the state of Connecticut. Those are the only two people to authorize, you know, if there's some reason they can't meet the state's own. So the state has made a 180-degree shift from where they were 5 years ago, which is very refreshing.
So does that mean we would have more pull now, adding more crosswalks over Route 6, like at Lake Road? Maybe one over the other side of the library, you know, going further the other direction on Route 6? We had talked about it last time I was on planning and zoning, and there was a lot, didn't seem as doable back then. And now we're looking at 316 improvements and.
Yeah.
A bunch of the towns around us have even on side roads where there's especially a rail trail, they hit a button, the lights flash and.
So
Yeah.
I think those are very effective.
Yeah, they're more effective than.
Cause I go
sometimes
down to
traffic
one of
lights.
those and I'm looking for somebody,
Yeah.
Right.
can't always see them, but boy, I see those
I
flashing
mean, we
lights.
may not
when
be
they
able
come
to do
on.
them everywhere,
Yeah.
but you know. Key.
And they're on the streets with the higher speed limits.
Right, especially, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the things that was very interesting is the federal transportation, actually Federal Highway Safety Administration, did a nationwide study of crosswalks. And what they were trying to determine in the study was whether making the crosswalks more visible, in other words, the difference between a basic crosswalk and what they call an enhanced crosswalk, which is not the flashing yellow rapid flashing beacons, but just, you know,
Better look, bigger, more visible.
yeah, more visible, whether that would increase the chances of somebody stopping for a pedestrian in a crosswalk. At the same time, they had a camera set up and they had a radar at the intersections. And what they published was very interesting, is that at a crosswalk, if the biggest difference is how fast a car is going. Irregardless of the speed limit on a road, if somebody's doing 30 miles an hour, there's only a 15 to 20% chance that they will stop for somebody at a crosswalk, regardless of whether they could see them or not. Because they did all the test crosswalks where there was plenty of visibility. So you could see the guy a quarter mile away waiting to cross, and people blew by it. As soon as you get the speeds down to around 20 miles an hour, around 75% of the people stop for. So the biggest determination of whether people are going to stop for somebody in a crosswalk is vehicle speed. And because of that, the Federal Highway Safety Administration has a series of more enhanced countermeasures based on the traffic count of the road and then how fast the 85th percentile speed of it is. So,
Okay, I think I'd like to call the complete streets a wrap at this point and move on to the next item, which is Jim, the gravel pit update.
Okay, two things. One is Alan Churchill from Heller and Sage will be filing, has prepared a lawsuit, a complaint, I believe is the right term, and it will be served sometime, served and filed with court in the next week, I believe. He was waiting to, he had incorporated some changes based on suggestions from both Jed and I, and the appeal period may or may not have been a factor in the timing. The second issue is Bill Genovese has applied for a variance to basically seeking relief from the requirement that 2 inches of topsoil be placed on the site. That's scheduled for hearing tomorrow night before the ZBA. We'll see how that goes. Do you have an opinion on that?
We have questions.
Say again?
May I ask a question?
Sure, yep.
So what's his hardship?
Okay, his hardship, I believe, is stated that he just made the argument that the site will be reused. It's a waste of time. I'm not saying, he has no hardship, okay? If you want my opinion, okay? But that's what he used. And hardship is sort of self-created, and we being the town, made him regrade that property and the topsoil was lost. When in actual fact, it was regraded because it was graded wrong initially. It wasn't functioning according to plan. I mean, should that variance be granted, the applicant would then have to come back to the planning and zoning commission once again.
Now, I had thought about going to the ZBA meeting and, didn't really want to go because I think that's, I like the fact that planning and zoning is separate from zoning board of appeals. But we've certainly put enough time in on this, that I was thinking about going in to make sure that we covered all the rationale for not having a hardship. I was advised that was not a good move, and so I won't. And Jim, I don't know if you saw later in the day, there was an email, from Mark Brantz with some other,
I did see it.
okay, other stuff pertaining to you at that meeting. So
And
I was thinking about going, and had now thought better of that, and we're gonna count on Jim to provide the right input there.
Yeah, and quite frankly, I try and stay. I don't try to stay out of the opinion side of things at CBA for the same reason that Jed does, but in this case, I can at least prepare a background statement and get some information out there, which I think will pretty much say it all. I think.
Okay,
But
I'm gonna
Jim?
move on. What? Go ahead,
Yes,
Leanne.
Jim,
Yes.
if you're staff, why would you want to stay out of it? Isn't that the point for you to, you're the land use staff, so aren't you going to be there in that capacity?
Yes. I understand. I agree with you to an extent. It's just that, I mean, zoning board of appeals the whole concept is, when do these regulations, when are they too onerous, or when do they not really fit? What's unique to this parcel? And I leave that argument to the applicant.
Right. Jim's job is to enforce the regulations as they are, and ZBA's job is to essentially say when they shouldn't apply as strictly as they're written. And so that's not really Jim's job, but obviously he can go by way of background and say, why the applicant is being held to this standard because of the regulations, because of the conditions of the special permit. But yeah, again, it's ZBA is in a judiciary role, sort of saying when the rules should not apply because of something unique to that property.
But I guess what I'm saying is, Jim, I guess I sort of understand and I sort of don't. As you said, the job is enforcement, and it's up to any given applicant to show why they shouldn't have to do something, not just because it's inconvenient for them. So, I think, I don't know. I think there is going to need to be some reinforcement because there's so much going on with this application, and that needs to be made very clear.
Who's gonna explain to the ZBA that he allowed under all this topsoil?
That would be me. I mean, I
You're gonna
can do
explain that whole
Yeah.
thing, that, all that, how it transpired?
I'm not gonna give them the whole history. I see no point in that. I think it's personally.
I think it's more cut and dried than that, it's an issue of the regulations for good reason, require at least 2 inches of topsoil. And there's no 2 inches of topsoil there, and there's no reason with that configuration of a lot that they can't have 2 inches of topsoil there.
Right.
So to get, Jim can certainly get into that history. But we gave him a year of opportunity to prove he could grow grass on without topsoil there, and that experiment didn't go very well.
The whole reason that there is a ZBA is so that an applicant, property owner, has the opportunity to make their argument to somebody else other than the zoning agent. It's the other, which is why I try not to get too involved.
But Jim's job is to ensure that we don't have to go and appeal the decision. That would be.
Right, his
would be
job
the worst
is to
thing
present.
But
I guess I'm not understanding about, Jim, I'm not sure if you used the word abstaining or refraining or something. Because I just want to make sure that the information comes across. Because otherwise, they're just going to be hearing from the applicant.
I understand, and I think a background statement is, we'll do that.
And is that coming from you or from one of the attorneys?
Both, actually. I mean, the attorney did say that, and we have some pretty astute folks on the zoning board of appeals that grasp what a hardship's all about. I think in the last few years, the board has gotten a little stricter with respect to our granting variances.
And Mr. Chair?
Okay.
Jed, can I jump in for a second?
Yep.
Yeah, so the other thing, and I mean, yeah, I would second, I don't know the ZBA that well. But I think ZBAs in general have gotten better at understanding what hardships are. And particularly, there's been some legal publications recently over the last 2-3 years that have indicated some 80 to 90% of variances are granted inappropriately where there is no legal hardship. And should it be appealed, which is to say, if for some reason this slips past ZBA and the ZBA says, oh, sure, that's a hardship, you can skip putting this topsoil down. If the town chooses to, or if anyone chooses to appeal it, and in many cases, I've seen planning and zoning commissions appeal ZBA rulings. If there's no hardship, the judges work that out quickly. So I would not, if the overall goal is to prevent, this variance from occurring, the ZBA should take care of it, and if not, the courts will quickly take care of it.
Okay, thanks.
any other questions on the gravel pit?
Mr. Chair, this is Catherine Hutchinson. Can make those at the public speak at the end, if you prefer.
Okay. I want to move on to new business at this point. And the playground improvements at the Andover Elementary School. And John, if you can post the drawing that I sent you this afternoon.
All right, can you see that?
I can, and yeah, I can see enough what we need to do. Yeah, okay.
I can zoom in where needed if you'd like.
So this, I think it was last Thursday, I became aware of the fact that, the Board of Ed and the PTA were trying to put in some new playground equipment at the school. And the initial thought was that it was an expansion of a playground. And so I was looking into this a little bit over the weekend, and I went over to the school yesterday morning, seems like a long time ago now, with Celeste Willard, who is, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Celeste, PTA president and the chairman of the Board of Ed. And we went over to look, and I was thinking that what we were gonna do was put something in, because when I talked to Celeste, she said it would be entirely within an existing playground area. And so the drawing that I was looking at only had the two play areas that are over on the left-hand side of the school, behind the school there. There's a couple of boxes, and I know you can't read them. John, you might be able to put your cursor on it to say play areas over there. There's one, there's two. Yep, that circles above. I thought it was gonna be in there. But it wasn't, and so where the school wants to put the playground equipment is in all the way over on the right-hand side of the screen where it says play area. It's right behind where the little basketball court is there, and no, further over to the right, all the way to where your cursor, all the way to the border there. More to the right. Right there,
Yep.
play area in the back behind that basketball thing. And that's where the equipment is gonna go. And so this is a fairly new drawing. This is the drawing that the town had done when we were doing the lot line correction, as part of finishing up the survey that we did to build the community center there. And this little play area showed up. And so my thinking is that, so we're gonna put some new playground equipment into an existing playground area. And that probably, is not an item that's of a concern to the planning and zoning. Celeste was kind enough to come tonight, just in case we had any questions on it. She's, we're learning to work together better. It was still a little bit of a short fused item. I think the stuff shows up, if it didn't show up today, it's within the next day or so. But we're working together to try and, make sure that we're doing things right. And I appreciate Celeste's effort on that. And she's here in case anybody had any questions about that. What I was trying to avoid was stuff going in and people saying, what's going on over there? We don't know nothing about that. And so she came tonight to make sure that we had the opportunity to ask any questions that we might have. So do any of the commission members have any questions for Celeste at this point on what it is that she's actually putting in? And it looks like there's no questions here, Celeste. So I think you are off and running. You need nothing else from planning and zoning with respect to the playground area.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Larson and members of the board. I appreciate your cooperation, and thank you very much for your time tonight. And thank you for putting this on the agenda so quickly. Thank you.
Okay,
Jed, could I?
go ahead. Yeah, Jim.
I believe that it would still require a zoning permit. It would be an administrative function. There would not be, it can be done very quickly. But the equipment would probably meet the definition of a structure, and as such would require a permit.
In a zoning
Not a
permit
big
is
deal.
something different than a planning and zoning permit. So, that, I'll let Jim get a hold of you to tell you what that is, but it's got nothing to do with the zoning regulations and that.
That'll be relatively simple, Celeste.
Very easy, Celeste.
Okay, as long as it's very easy. Okay, so who do I contact for that, Mr. Hallisey?
Yes.
Okay, I'll give you a call tomorrow and work with you on getting that. And is it an application process, or what is if you could just give me a
Simple
rundown.
one page form, yes, application.
Okay, do I have to post a sign or anything or anything like that?
Nope, it's a use of
No.
right. Administrative permit.
Okay, are you in the office tomorrow?
briefly in the morning, yes.
Okay, all right, I'll give you a call. Thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Good night.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Bye.
Next item up is the approval of the minutes from the public hearing on September 17th and the regular meeting on September 17th. So I'll make a motion, well, let's go through and see if anybody's got any comments first, and then I will make a motion to approve them as amended.
I have a comment, Jed.
Okay, go ahead.
Number 9, Patrick Doherty asked to rejoin the Economic Development Commission. I believe, I thought he was looking for guidance as to whether that was appropriate. Would that be it?
It was more of, how do I go about it? Because the Economic Development Commission was down on membership and
Okay.
it was a letter of intent was written by me to the town clerk, but my ultimate question was any kind of conflict of interest in
Right.
talking to or addressing any proposed additional usages for the agricultural business that came to talk to us. So, but he's being addressed by the Planning and Zoning Commission separately, and that's, I think, on the agenda for the Plan of
Right.
Conservation.
Yeah.
So,
I'm just suggesting
Yeah.
the minutes could.
Yeah.
could
Oh,
perhaps better reflect that.
all right. And tomorrow night's the meeting for that commission. I think Elaine, the chair of that commission, went to the Board of Selectmen to get recommendations. And I don't know if that was done or not, but,
Yes, the Board of Selectmen, you are
Thank
appointed
oh, thanks.
to the EDC.
Great.
So Jim, did you have a specific wording recommendation instead of asked, how about we say Patrick already mentioned he planned to rejoin the Economic Development Commission?
That's fine with me.
Okay,
It looked just very incomplete and sort of dangling there.
I'm gonna add like for conflict or.
no, just, it gave us a chance to consider it, and we considered that it was fine. Any other comments, on the minutes? And I did have a couple, up at the top, public present for the regular meeting. As I recall, Catherine Hutchinson attended the regular meeting too. I could not imagine that she would not attend while we were acting on that, So I didn't go back to watch the video, but I'm fairly confident that she was in attendance. And then down in paragraph 2, the second line in the non-bolded stuff, it says topsoil, grass, and loam. That should be loam, LOAM. And then in the next line down, instead of to address application and restoration plan instead of reclamation plan. And then at the very end of that paragraph, Catherine Hutchinson commented regarding addressing how the property is currently graded and reviewed as built. Regrading will need to be done to conform with plan filed. And I had mentioned that grading had been done over the last several days on the site. And those were the only comments that I had. Anybody else have any comments on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended. Okay, we'll let Ann do it this time. Scott had the last one. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Ann?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Patrick?
Aye.
Leanne?
Hi.
And I vote aye as well. The minutes for both the public hearing and the regular meeting are approved as amended. Next up, on the agenda is correspondence. Jim, do we have any correspondence to discuss?
None.
None, okay. Administrative reports, we did not have a inland wetlands meeting this month, so, nothing to report on that. Jim, zoning agent report.
I am following up on a few complaints, specifically sign complaints. There were numerous signs down at the corner of the Lake Road and Route 6, which somehow disappeared. I don't know what happened to them, in all honesty, but they're gone. I've also gotten a few complaints regarding election signs, which I'm following up on. What I do intend to do, hopefully tomorrow morning, is send out a copy of the recently adopted sign the existing sign regulation to the chairs of the two chairs of the commissions. Just as a reminder, I did meet with the owner of ProTech, Benjamin Franklin, regarding a violation notice, and he is working on a site plan to bring that site into compliance. Also gotten a few light complaints, which I'm chasing down. That's all I have. Open any questions.
Any questions for Jim? Okay. Next up's town planner, John.
I don't have much additional to report other than working on the POCD. I will note that I had a good conversation with Mr. Keir Shah, who is the current owner of the Andover Plaza, just as a matter of sort of economic development outreach. He is looking to put some new tenants in, is going to update the signage. Apparently the Chinese restaurant is going to be replaced by a Thai or Vietnamese restaurant, a place that they sell pho primarily. And he seemed very open to opportunities for connectivity. I think he was willing to talk about connecting to the airline trail, the Hop River Trail, as well as looking at maybe some municipal cost share or some incentives to do some facade or facility improvements. So we're going to schedule a time for Eric and I to go and visit with him on site to talk about some of these opportunities. But he certainly seemed willing to, to try to be a more active property owner in improving the plaza. He did express some financial issues that basically they bought the plaza right before COVID, basically at the height of the market before retail crashed entirely. So he's a little bit financially strapped, but is certainly willing to try to make improvements as he's able. But we'll follow up on that.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, this is I have been working with Ryan I'm sorry, Fitch, thank you, about some potential zoning regulations for agritourism or event facilities on farmland. Is that later in the agenda?
It is, and
Okay.
it's gonna be the very next thing, so that we'll shift from administrative reports to commission discussion miscellaneous. And first up is regulations to allow uses ancillary to a farm operation. So I'll turn it over to you, John.
Okay. So again, you'll recall at last month's meeting, there was some discussion about the continuing ability of the Fitches to hold concerts, weddings, other special events at one of their tree farm properties. And that's currently not enabled by the zoning regulations. And so there was some back and forth, and I had sort of offered to assist Mr. Fitch in putting some ideas together. I don't know if he's there today, but we went back and forth on email, and I shared some examples from other communities, and with a little bit of input from Mr. Fitch, tailored it a little bit, and presented to Jed, and I think Jed, you forwarded this around, right?
I did, yep.
A draft agritourism regulation based on something that I'd written last year this is October. So earlier this year in the town of East Hampton. I'm happy to put it on the screen if you'd like. That it kind of goes through kind of two categories of farm-based uses. One being, you know, with some nexus to the farm, whether that's, you know, hay rides or you know, a pick your own or corn maze or things like that that are sort of farm related, that, you know, sort of play up the public interface with the farm itself, which could be an as of right type use, a zoning permit type use. And then other activities that use the land but don't have a clear nexus to the farm. And this would include things like concerts, wedding events, special gatherings, you know, private parties, that sort of thing, that would require a special permit. And I kind of detailed it a little bit, but before I don't want to get too far into this, because again, I had done this initially as a favor or some technical expertise to offer to Mr. Fitch, with the idea that he would be the applicant on a proposed text amendment. But you know, he didn't seem to grab that. I don't want to go too far into advocacy for this, because again, I don't know if the commission wants to take this up as a topic of their own, you know, of their own leadership or of their own initiative, or, you know, would you prefer to have this presented essentially by Mr. Fitch or someone else as a private text amendment application? So I wanted to be careful about which side of the fence I was on here when in preparing these regs.
So having, you know, given that a little thought, I would prefer that we, the town, you know, sort of take the lead on coming up with a regulation, because that way we can have a better shot at making the regulation what we think is reasonable. Not that what you proposed isn't reasonable, but you know, I think I also sent around to the commission the wedding venue regulation and the agro tourism regulation for Columbia. And they were both, in my mind, more, I was gonna say significantly more restrictive than what the proposal that you agreed to with working with Mr. Fitch. And so, you know, I think, you know, one of the concerns I had, and I know Jim made the same comment on it, was, you know, we do concerts here at the town hall in the summer a couple of times, and we do them over at the lake. And somehow, you know, I would like to avoid the comment, why are you regulating me, but not the town? And I don't know what the answer is there. I was gonna ask you, and then I forgot to send you an email. Yeah, how does Columbia? Columbia has concerts every now and then, I think somewhere. Don't even know where it is, but how do they regulate those? Maybe they don't.
I don't think they do, actually. I think,
Okay.
you know, sort of one-off type of municipal functions.
And that was my thought about the town. You know, we maybe do 2 or 3 concerts a year. The lake does probably 2 a year. And so none of those are a big hardship on anybody. And I think in both cases, they're probably done by 8 o'clock in the evening on Fridays or Saturday nights, as opposed to Mr. Fitch wanted to go to 9 or 10. I can't remember. But, you know, maybe we have a concert from 7 to 9, 6 to 8, something like that, but we certainly don't go to 10 o'clock. And it's very limited in number, so I would like to have something that we do that limits him. But other than that, you know, I thought the tie-in to the non-agricultural things, the way that you had it, was good. I see the signs are up for the funky monkey thing going on soon, and I think maybe Mr. Fitch, you know, thinks he's got what he wants now. We didn't tell him to stop anything. And so he's got no incentive to come to us with regulations at this point. And, you know, I'm thinking that he probably won't have an outdoor concert until next spring, late spring, summer. And so we've got some time to come through what we think is right. He can come talk to us at the public hearing on that. But that was my cut. I'm open to, you know, thoughts from the commission after giving you when I thought about that. Anybody else have any thoughts there? Yeah, Patrick.
I wasn't able to find it quickly in our regs, but is it currently our noise ordinance 10 o'clock PM for the town?
We don't have a noise
Or,
ordinance.
okay.
So, and that gets into the difficulty with measuring sound, and I know John in his draft talked about the state
State guidelines.
guidelines, and I spent some time trying to figure those out, and it wasn't easy for me. They had different, it was more like industrial machinery inside a building or something, but I didn't see how we would apply those necessarily. I think I don't know, I'm still stumped there. That I don't want to recreate the wheel, but I need to have something that I can understand as well, what it was going through. Scott, Ann? Leanne, any thoughts?
Yes, but not about, I have a question and a comment while we're still in commission discussion, but it's not about Brian Fitch or the, I read the materials you sent about weddings and agritourism, et cetera, but my comment and question is about something else.
Okay, we'll get to it in a minute or two then. Yep,
I
Ann?
was thinking of one thing about the idea of, the town has concerts at the gazebo. Would he say, well, why aren't you regulating them? I'm thinking, when the town has stuff at the gazebo, they're probably not charging for the concert or the use of the facility, whereas Fitch down there on his farm, he's probably charging somebody to use the facility. So that makes it a different situation, and we probably do need to have some regulations for that.
But in his comeback, when asked about that was, we don't charge anybody, it's donations. And
He says he takes donations. for
yes,
that.
he doesn't
Oh.
charge anybody, he just accepts donations,
Hmm.
which is kind of, that's the standard loophole for anybody who does those kinds of things.
I see, yeah.
But still, I think there's something about, sometimes when people are gonna have a noisy party in their yard, they go to all the neighbors, they invite them.
Yeah,
And they make sure that, they get them on board before they do that.
mhm.
But, I think, what I've seen the lake do, what I've seen the town do, I think they're few and far between. The one neighbor that came to talk to us is concerned about how often are they gonna be having these concerts, it keeps expanding, and I didn't think that our concerts went very late at night,
Right.
and
yeah.
we're not anything there.
And
So,
Coventry's had some discussions or problems with a winery up in Coventry there. And they, with their events and things, so I don't know how they managed to solve that, if they have. I don't
well,
know.
and I think it was the winery down in Columbia, what John sent. They talk about having the musical venue inside the building.
Hmm.
And if they put it in a tent outside, it's gotta be what's considered a soundproof tent.
Mhm.
So there's one example of, trying to mitigate the noise. I think I was talking to somebody, it might have been Anne Marie, at one of the recent, but probably the last meeting, because we were talking about this. I know the neighbors out at Carter Farm in Marlboro have complained, and they either limit their concerts to earlier in the day. I went online, looks like, one, they're done for the year, but they'd have some Friday night things that I can't remember when they went, but it might have been 8 or 9 o'clock. Yeah, certainly not 10 o'clock and that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then, Columbia took the approach, here's one for agritourism, and then they did another set of regulations for the wedding venue place that they want to build. And again, that's all indoor noise, but everybody's concerned. East Hampton, just, the River East last week talked about, the people who are gonna put in the venue to have concerts pulled the permit because, they got so much backlash on that, so. But anyhow, that's what I think about that, and, I would like to regulate the gamut, but I think concerts hold a special place in there because they are noisier and affect the neighbors more than the other stuff does.
Sure.
Anybody else?
You're gonna wait until he approaches the commission?
No, I intend to, continue working with John to try and, come up with something, and I would like to, by next spring, we've got a regulation, and we're going out to the neighbors and him for public comment on it. But it's what we think is reasonable. And that's what I'd like to do. We got a couple of months to work on that. Just like I was hoping that we had a couple of months to work on the soccer lights, but we chose not to do that until we wanted to go put the lights on again.
Right.
Unfortunate, a little bit. Any other comments on the farm
I don't know if
operation?
I should or not.
Oh, go ahead.
I was wondering if anybody has, any contact has been made with Phil Chester in Lebanon. Because they have, Lebanon's a largely agricultural community,
Yep.
and they do have a lot of zoning ordinances revolving around agriculture in town.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
don't.
Then there's something John can look at. I know he sent out the Columbia things because he's a town planner for Columbia as well, so.
Yeah, no, I've worked with Phil for 20 years and have found this, the Lebanon zoning regulations, if it's not strictly agriculture, it tends not to be particularly progressive. It's very protective of agriculture and supportive of agriculture as agriculture, but it doesn't tend to be particularly supportive of broader
I know they-
activity.
Something about noise, I know that.
Sure. But yeah,
Okay.
happy to work with you on it, Jed.
Yeah.
Corn growing is very quiet.
So anyhow, yeah, that would be my goal, John, is over the course of the winter, in all your spare time, we have a chance to sort out how we might, at least recognize the town and the lake are doing some concerts too, and maybe it needs a concert regulation in section 4 of our regs or something, but those are the goals that I would be shooting for, and not necessarily driven by Mr. Fitch. I think if we wait for him, we'll be waiting a long time.
Okay, sounds good.
Next item up is just, I wanted to quickly address seasonal dwellings. And, we've got, we're gonna have, an application at some point. The fella at 268 Lake Road, it's a little 3-season house. And, he wants to rebuild it into a 4-season house. And so the first question you ask yourself is, how do you know it's a 3-season house? And the only answer I can come up with is because it's always been that way, which normally isn't a very good answer. Certainly there's nothing in the town records that show which houses are 3-season and which aren't. Way back when Andover Lake first started, there were a lot of people that built little cabins, didn't have heating on them, or any of that stuff, and they used them during the summer. We've got the definition of a seasonal dwelling, which is a house that is occupied from May through October. Doesn't allow June through November or anything other than that. But when you ask yourself what a 3-season house is, it probably doesn't have heat, not well insulated, all those kind of things. And I don't think there's any of those out there right now. The two seasonal houses that I'm aware of, the other one is, I think it's 290 or 296 Lake Road, right down the other side of me. And it's a very nice house. Very small lots, both of them. And but the small lot that's 296 is maybe a quarter of an acre. The house right next to it, which is a year-round house, is 0.08 acres.
Let me write that down.
And so Now, if you look at the chart where this person would have to go to get a variance, it's got, you know, a significant difference in size, of the number of square feet on the lot. But the square feet that's required in either case is much bigger than most of the lots that are on the lake. And so my thought is that the time for seasonal house regulations is come and gone. You know, we don't have seasonal houses over there. As long as they can meet the sanitation requirements, they're good to go. Anybody who's gonna build a house on Andover Lake now is gonna build a nice house that's all year round. So my thought was to have that conversation a little bit, and probably not in a crisis manner, but and I don't know when Wayne's gonna come to do that, but I think we should just get rid of the seasonal requirements, because we don't know what houses are there, and they can all meet the definition of year round because they got heat, water, and all that kind of stuff. At least I think. I don't know how we would even find out, see which ones don't. Any comments from the commission before I start putzing around with that a little bit?
There's hardly any left that are seasonal.
Yeah, well, as I say, I'm aware of two, and it's just by tribal knowledge out there that, you know, they've always been that way. You know, if somebody says, show me something that says it's a seasonal house, I couldn't do it.
It looks like the seasonal and year-round definitions of permitted uses are virtually identical. I didn't verify that yet, but.
Yeah, if you look at, so it's the chart in section 11.2 where you get into different frontage requirements and that sort of thing. But they're all way in excess of what the majority of the houses are on the lakes.
Yeah, the only place where seasonal dwellings comes up in the regulations, other than the definition, is conversion from seasonal to year round is a special permit use in the lake zone. It's the only reference that I'm aware of.
But we were talking at some point, Jim, about the fact that if he's got a seasonal house, he's already got the variance to go to that smaller lot. And now he wants to build a full season house, he'd have to go to the ZBA, prove a hardship, in which anybody that's building a house on the lake, 90%, you know, don't meet the requirements. They're all something. And so why make it all that harder for something where these houses are bigger than a lot of the year-round houses?
Yeah, I think initially it may have been a great idea. It kept it.
It was a great idea. Time's come and gone. So, yeah, that's my thinking. Okay, so
Looks like none of them make it. Most of them. Don't
What's
make
that?
this, most of them don't make the space
right,
requirement.
yeah, they're not even close.
Yeah.
And so, anyhow, I'll start working on that, and just so you know, I went through the rest of the chart of all those things that we wanted to put in the regs that we had identified were problems, including in the flood zone, and you know, I got those ready to go on the next edition of whatever comes down the pike, and so maybe it'll be seasonal dwellings and concerts. But I'm ready to take care of the flood zone issues, I think. Okay, moving on to 10C is signs. And Scott, you were asking, you know, to have that on the agenda. Anything in particular you wanted to talk about with the signs?
No, I just wanted to, to clarify to everyone. There's a difference between political signs and election signs. Which, if you read it, you would think a political sign was an election sign, but it's not. Political sign is different. And the square footage requirements are different. And there's also something that needs to be talked about with on town property, and apparently the Board of Selectmen had a meeting and they address signs on the town's property. And, that's not in the regulations either.
Okay, so, I'll start out by saying, I don't like our town regulations, although I had a big hand in crafting them or trying to reshape them a little bit after, about 4 years ago, the issue came up with respect to the complaint was we need to be able to put our our election signs out earlier because we're doing early voting and all that kind of stuff. And that was true. And so about that same time, we also started wrestling with the free speech requirements. So somebody can, we can't regulate content on signs at all. That's a free speech issue. You can put whatever you feel like on the sign. But as Scott mentioned, political signs are different than election signs. And election signs, you can now put up as early as you want. And I appreciate the fact that, folks around town showed admirable restraint in not putting them out there starting in May. But once one person, once I saw that first sign go out, there was a proliferation of signs and they all started spreading fast. So it's like anything else. Once somebody goes, then everybody else goes too. But we do have a requirement that the election signs are taken down within 7 days of an election, just like any other temporary sign that's taken down within 7 days of completion of the event. Now, we don't have any time requirements on political signs. The difference between a political sign and an election sign is a political sign states your point of view, where an election sign talks about a candidate. And there's an end to the election sign. And the other requirement that came with both election signs and political signs was we had to allow them to be as big as any other sign that we allowed in the district. So if we allowed a 16 square foot sign, we had to allow a 16 square foot political sign and a 16 square foot election sign. And 16 square foot is for the residential areas, because that's as big a sign as we allow there. It's 32 square feet in the business and industrial areas, because we allow 32 square foot sign there. I thought we restricted putting signs on town property. I went looking for that this afternoon, and we don't restrict signs from town property. What we do have in our regs is there are no signs on the town right of way or within 15 feet of your lot line. Eric, you had a comment?
So my comment is simply that the town board of selectmen, in a sense, acts as any other landowner. So the right of way you get to regulate, but you can't say what, it's the board of selectmen that gets to say what signs are on town property, as long as it conforms to the rest of your sign regs.
Yep. Yeah, so there's probably a lot of political signs that we don't want on town property because we don't want the town taking political stance on all the social issues. But they might allow election signs. They frequently do, but our regs forbid putting signs in the town right away. And that's where most of the signs go. And so, and we knew when we put that in there, I would have just assumed to have no temporary signs in the town at all. That probably wasn't the right answer, but they shouldn't be. We said you should be putting your signs 15 feet back from the road, because that's normally what the town right away is along the road. And you shouldn't have it within 15 feet of your property line, because we want to know who's putting that sign up. Shouldn't be confusing between you and the neighbor, whatever. So that's what I know about signs in association with the election coming up. And I'd be happy to try and answer any questions we have, but it certainly is not clear and easy to understand as you go through there. I'll be the first to admit that. Any comments on signs?
Glad that we had the conversation.
So I actually have a question, one which. It's almost like an interpretation question, but so we have a regulation that says. In the residential district in the ARD, the maximum size for a sign is 16 square feet.
Yep.
And in the business industrial zone, it's 32 square feet. But on a particular property, you can have a maximum of X number of square feet of signs.
Yep.
So my question comes in, when it comes to town property, it's fine for an individual homeowner or business owner to say, I will let these people, but not these people, this, but not that,
Yeah.
right? But as a town, the town can't be making a decision to put up this sign versus that sign. So given that there's a specific, on town property, that same limit applies. How is that, or could that be enforced? Because, I sort of look at that and say a maximum of X number of square feet per candidate?
Yeah.
Or per what? Cause if it's total, the first guy that comes along that puts up a 32 square feet and a 16 square feet locks up that entire piece of town property for everybody else.
Really, that can be only construed as one lot. Even if it's town property, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the town owns individual lots, but that whole area between Route 316 and School Road, that is essentially all a single lot.
Single lot.
It is.
So the question is, how does that get interpreted in terms of what is allowed and what is not allowed?
Right.
Because the Board of Selectmen may say, yeah, we're not gonna regulate that, which is what they've said in the past.
Yep.
And I'm still going with until they change their mind. But how does the commission interpret the total limit on the total square foot of signs? Is that per candidate or per total? Or per party, or per what?
Says lot.
It says per lot, and so. My approach was, I wasn't gonna worry about that until we were serious about enforcing all the signs that were in the town right away. It's written for homes, and I haven't gone out to count the square footage there, but certainly if you've got a 16 square foot sign, you're significantly limited in how many other signs you can put up. I haven't seen anybody that I thought was in violation of the total square footage thing yet, as I was driving around. I've seen maybe 5 or 6 little signs,
Yeah.
but that's as much as I've seen, so I haven't gone off to prove myself unhappy with anything yet. And if I saw hundreds of signs in front of the town hall, then I'd have to go think about it a little bit, because something's not right there. But I haven't seen that yet.
Well, ordinarily, both parties just before the election start.
Yep.
Condensing all the signs and moving a lot of the signs into that small area. So I'm just saying, what is the zoning commission or what is the zoning agent's take on that before that happens? Cause I know I'm gonna get the complaints about it on election day, potentially. What does?
I know
One side
there's,
of the other complaint, is that
Yeah.
it? Or,
well, and last year, there was an issue of putting signs out in front of the school. The school didn't want them out there, even though that was town property.
It has to be okay by the school,
Why?
because it's in there.
No, it's town property.
Well, the school board of education, it says, has a right to say what signs go, that's what in there, it says that anyway, right?
I'm not
I'm pretty sure
aware.
it says the board of education has the right to have a say.
I'm not looking at the regulations, so I can't tell you exactly.
That's my recollection. I don't see it, but
Yeah.
Hopefully that's not something that's worth.
I believe that
I don't know. Is that trying to check it?
Self-destruct
Yeah.
signal.
I'm not aware of that in there, Scott.
I think I read it.
Okay, it could be, there's stuff in there that, you know, surprises me all the time.
Put in that Board of Education in the science and see if it comes up.
Unless somebody left an alarm. in it.
Oh. I know where it says it, and my copy's out of date, I don't have to do it. We put it in there because
because of the banners.
of the banners. You know, we didn't want,
Yeah, that's right.
we wanted to give the school. Yeah. So what's it say?
Any signs placed on any end of or elementary school building or grounds shall require prior notification to Board of Education or their designee. And such signs shall not impair the functioning of the elementary school building operations determined by the zoning enforcement officer.
Okay, yep, I have to go look at that, I forgot about that, you know, certainly we didn't want to put banners up here that the school didn't want.
Right.
Whether, how that plays out in the election, I don't know.
Right, and remember the area,
Thank you.
the area in front of
Thanks,
the
Marina.
gazebo is school property, so that is largely. I don't know how that gets dealt with, but that seems like a commission and CEO.
Yep, I guess I have to think fast on that one, because that's gonna come up quick. Luckily, I'll be out of town on election day. I don't know, I'll think about that a little bit. That certainly was not the intention of why those words were put in there. We wanted to give. We were trying to give the Board of Ed control over the banners and those kind of signs around here. It had nothing to do with election signs at the time, and maybe we shot ourselves in the foot, maybe I did, but there you go. Wouldn't be the first time, won't be the last.
Why wouldn't they have, say, there's signs on, you know, they're only because you're saying that it's the town's property?
It's the school property where the gazebo is.
I'm just saying if they put them up on the hill or something.
Yeah, so, maybe that's something we'll have to work out with the Board of Ed a little bit before we get there. And we have certainly been cooperative with the chairman of the Board of Ed for the last couple of weeks, last couple of months, so, I think, taking that, we actually, when we crafted those words, we tried to put in something that gave all authority over signs to the Board of Education. And the feedback we got from our attorney was, no, they don't get to say what signs are. You can get feedback from them, but it's a planning and zoning commission that says what kind of signs you put out. And so that's why we modified the words a little bit to give them a say in that. But there you go. I'll talk to Celeste. Good, thank you.
It's another bad subject, something that's not really.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the huge
says
one on Friday.
prior
I did that with Hebron.
Yeah, just, it says prior notification, so.
Oh, they got 66. Yeah, they got that little spot that's sign central. Okay. Any other comments on signs?
Maybe you could have 32 feet for 32 square feet per.
For what?
Every person,
Yeah.
Per person, per party?
party, yeah, party, person, party. It wouldn't be too hard this election, but.
Yeah,
it may do
I may not get there in time for this.
Would be a
election,
little
but
harder.
I will
Yeah.
at least contact Celeste to see if we can move the election signs up along here and not just be in front of town hall. And go with that.
Couple of gray areas.
There's a lot of gray areas, and that's what, you know, I started making the sign regulations worse instead of better when I was trying to get rid of all those gray areas. Just impossible to do. I just, felt like it was running down the rabbit hole. I'm gonna move on to public comment. Catherine Hutchinson, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Oh, would you like to make any comments tonight?
Yes. Yes, I'd like to make the comment that I agree with the commission that it's very important that Jim go there to the meeting tomorrow night, because this is a situation in which the background information and what led up to where the applicant is brought before the ZBA when they're hearing the application for a variance. Not only, as you all know, that the hardship issue, but also the requirement with regard to it not being a self-created hardship. And I think with the background information, Jim can explain with regard to the original approval of the plan was 4 inches. The regulations have already always provided for the 2-inch requirement of the loan, and that the party be reclaimed, the parcel be reclaimed upon the completion. That he, knowing that, chose to go forward with his project, and now is asking for relief from the zoning regulations because of the way the operation was done. He now doesn't want to comply with not only what the commission's original approval was, but what our zoning regulations have already always provided. That is at least the 2 inches. So I'm glad the commission is having Jim go there to present some of this background.
Okay, yeah, and as a, final comment on that, the original application that was approved had that piece of property divided up into 6 sections. And the applicant was never supposed to have more than 2 sections disturbed at one time. One section was to be restored before he went on to the next one. And so it has really been not quite what we were expecting for a long time. So
Yeah, I think the point you just made is an excellent one, and that they need to be made, commission, the ZBA needs to be made aware of that. In addition to, the other, we don't know if he sold any of the topsoil off, but we do know that he covered it up, what he did have left. So.
no, the great kid cover up.
But so that's why, again, I pleased that the commission, that Jim is going to be there and provide some background, and thank you for sending him to go.
Yep.
Needless to say, I'll be there, but thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other public comment?
Jed?
Yep.
Jed, this is Leanne. Can I just go back to the comment I was gonna make under commission open discussion?
Yes.
It was regarding, going back to the complete streets topic. I wanted to mention that I think in addition to the driving, the aspect of people driving, the excessive speed is inexcusable. But I wanted to say that I feel that some of the responsibility lies with pedestrians as well. I see it much more so with pedestrians and bicyclists, but I see people wearing on Route 6 and other streets, mainly Route 6, at dusk or after dusk, wearing no light-colored or reflective clothing. I see people walking, 2 or 3 people, in the street. People, listening to music or whatever they're listening to. Certainly people on their phones. I've seen people in Andover and elsewhere walk right out into the road. I saw an entire family in a crosswalk at the store's downtown area very recently. The light was green. They were right in the middle of the crosswalk. Their light was red. 2 children, just complete lack of personal responsibility. I've seen it, people, especially on phones, just walk right out into traffic. So I wanted to make one last point, that because John was making a list, that in addition to doing as much enforcement, whether it's ticketing and the physical conditions of the roads. I think people, especially pedestrians, need to take some personal responsibility too.
Absolutely. Takes all parties to feel responsible to make the environment safe. And I think another thing that people underestimate, at least when your eyes get to be as old as mine are, they don't see as well in the twilight or whatever. And I have been shocked at times. I'll come around the corner or somebody pops out in front of me that I didn't know was there. And I guess, I just fortunate that one, that they were walking, facing traffic and moved over to the side of the road so that I didn't hit them. So, even as safe as I try to be, I've got shortcomings in those areas. And I think when you're young, you don't appreciate that. So.
No, and I think you just mentioned something else. It's not unusual to see people walking on the wrong side of the road as well.
Yep, absolutely. So, yeah, it takes, everybody needs to take ownership for making the roads safe. That's the way it has to be. And thank you for your comment, Leanne.
You're welcome, thanks.
Mr. Chair, this is Catherine Hutchinson again. Could we get back to public comments in a minute?
Of course.
I believe it was Eric talking about his dad talking about the townspeople making use of the railroad when it went through. There were times a couple of girlfriends and I would get on the train and go to Willimantic to go to the movies. And then there was no train coming back later that night, so one of our folks would have to come pick us up. But also, when my dad went to high school, we all went to Wyndham. My dad went to high school. They used to take the train to Willimantic to go to high school. So
Wow.
just a little bit of trivia, but also to show how the importance the train was during that period of time to the town of Andover. And it's great that the rail trail is there now and it's just becoming such a significant part of the town as well.
Thank you, Catherine. Next up is meeting date and venue. The date is November 19th.
Hey, Jed, it's Joanne Hebert. Can I just say one quick thing?
Oh, yes, Joanne, thank you.
No, it's that I love that fun fact of that she just brought up about the taking the train. But no, very informative meeting. I just wanted to stay through the end. I always like learning a lot. Thank you so much. I mean, I don't have much to add, but since I waited, I thought I would just let you know that I did learn a lot. Thank you for the informative meeting and good night.
I appreciate you attending. It's, nice to have some people show up, see what we're doing now and then. Appreciate it. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.
So the next meeting is November 19th. Venue is to be determined. I'll look and see if we can do a run through the new community senior center. If it's not there, it'll be here. Then my plan going forward after that is December through March, probably will be Zoom only for the winter months. And then in April, maybe we'll start trying to meet in person again. But and at the next meeting, I'll also go through proposed calendar dates for next year. And I looked through in moving our meetings to Tuesday, really made it great with all the holidays. We don't have to redo any of them, and it works out being the third Tuesday of the month all year long. There was no interruptions to that, but I'll bring a formal listing so that we can vote on that next month. Any other comments before we adjourn here? Hearing none, I thank everybody for the support as always. Thank Ann for setting up, that we could use the room. Ann and Marina got over here at 6:30 so we could make sure all the technology worked, and we got her going. So I appreciate that. John, thanks for the work on the POCD and the concert reg such that it is. And Wayne, great to have you as part of the team, and look forward to working with you here. And with that, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Patrick seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Leanne, are you with us on, ready to adjourn? Well, maybe not. So I'll call it a Leanne abstaining unless she jumps in here before we wrap up. And the motion passes 4-0-1 with Leanne.